Let's talk about the Tennessee Titans and Will Levis because this team continues to make major moves. They went out and they made a huge trade to get L'Jarius Sneed to help out their secondary, but they've made some more moves as well. This is going to cover the big moves they made in free agency and why this could be a dangerous team moving forward in the AFC South. When you look at the Tennessee Titans from this previous season, it wasn't pretty. Derrick Henry was a very good running back with the team, but the offensive line was one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL. And you had a rookie quarterback in Will Levis starting 8 games this season. Because remember, Ryan Tannehill started the start of the season. And he was supposed to be the starter. They drafted Will Levis. Will Levis went to the second round. He should have been a first round pick in my opinion, but he wasn't. Then you also have Malik Willis on the roster, and he's still on the roster. I think Malik Willis is a backup quarterback at best or just a very good third stringer. But you look at what Will Levis was able to do in his first game against the Atlanta Falcons when he started. 4 passing touchdowns, and that was against a top passing defense in the NFL, and he was getting beat up the entire game. It wasn't like he went out there and he was not dealing with any pressure. So they had to go out there and they had to address the offensive line. Will Levis in that game against the Atlanta Falcons was 19 of 29, 238 passing yards, 4 passing touchdowns. He only got sacked twice, but he was evading pressure pretty much the entire game. And you could say that was his best game. But a game that I like to look at was against the Steelers on Thursday night, where the wide receivers were not getting open. Besides DeAndre Hopkins on a short week, he did not have help out there in that wide receiving core. Treylon Burks got injured in that game, and Treylon Burks has not caught on just yet. But when you look at the moves they've made in free agency so far, it's going to help Will Levis and this entire offense in general against teams like the Steelers who can bring pressure with guys like TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith. Why did I bring up that Steelers game? For one, this kid started on short week's notice against the Atlanta Falcons. Then he had to flip that back against the Steelers on a Thursday night football game, another short week. And what he did against the Steelers was pretty impressive. Now, they did lose that game 20-16. He was 22 of 39, 262 passing yards, 0 passing touchdowns, and 1 interception. And the 1 interception came late in the fourth quarter where he's just trying to throw the football into the red zone. And they were close in that game. Will Levis has shown that he has franchise quarterback type potential with how big he is and how big that arm is. And I love the moves they're doing right now because it's giving Will Levis more help up front and it's giving him more help in the running back room as well. So let's talk about these moves. Lord Cushenberry from the Denver Broncos, the big center. I love this move. This is my favorite move. Over L'Jarius Sneed, over bringing in Calvin Ridley, I love this move the most. You may say why? Because you look at this offensive line. Besides Peter Skoronski, no one on this offensive line was good. You bring in a guy like Lord Cushenberry. In 1,070 snaps played this season, he only allowed 1 sack, and he's one of the best run-blocking centers in the NFL. You now have a running back trio with Tony Pollard, and then you have Tajay Spears as well. And you still have a very good running back in Julius Chestnut who can come out there and make some big plays with this team. And I think that he could be the sledgehammer running back of this team. The same with Hassan Haskins. But bringing in a guy like Tony Pollard and Lord Cushenberry, that's going to help out this team. Lord Cushenberry was a main protector for Russell Wilson and the Denver Broncos. At the halfway point in the season, they were averaging over 100 yards rushing by just running the football up the middle of the field because of Lord Cushenberry. That's how good he is. And a center can be a quarterback's best friend on the offensive line. They can recognize blitzes. They can recognize certain looks. And Will Levis is entering year 2 with a brand new head coach. So putting veterans around him in the front of him, that's only going to help. They can go out there and they can pay guys like Lord Cushenberry and Calvin Ridley a lot of money because Will Levis is on this short year deal. And he wasn't a first round pick. He was a second round pick. So he's making even less money than a typical first rounder would make. So the Tennessee Titans right now, they're sitting pretty. I still find it very interesting that this guy was not a first round pick because of how big he is and how good he was at Kentucky. I understand he'll have some turnover worthy plays here and there, but he also has some crazy plays. Now, is Will Levis the perfect quarterback? No, no one is unless you're Patrick Mahomes. But Will Levis has that ability to go out there, fight through sacks, fight through pressure, and still deliver the football on a dime, like how he did against the Steelers and like how he did against the Atlanta Falcons and also against the Miami Dolphins, which I think was his best test. They won that game 28-27. He was 23 of 38 on the day, 327 passing yards, 1 passing touchdown, and 1 interception. He outplayed Tua Tagovailoa on his home field. Granted, Tyreek Hill got hurt early in that game, but Will Levis was the nucleus of that offense in that game, him and that run game. So bringing in a guy like Lloyd Cushenberry to continue to help out the offensive line, I love that move. And speaking of Peter Skoronski, he had a solid rookie season. He was the best offensive lineman with this team. And 863 snaps played this season, he had 1 penalty and 5 sacks allowed. You may look at that sack number and say that's too much for a rookie lineman. But usually rookie linemen struggle in the NFL. The last 4 weeks of the season, he looked very good and he looked very solid for majority of the season. Like I said, he was the best offensive lineman with this team. Now, they still have to go out there and get tackle help. Bringing in guys like Calvin Ridley and now trading for L'Jarius Sneed, you can put that first-round pick that you have that's going to be a high first-round pick on an offensive tackle. Maybe it's a guy like Joe Alt or Ole Fashanu. You could bring in one of those guys to help bolster this offensive line. And next thing you know, you bring in Lloyd Cushenberry, you bring in another rookie tackle, and you have Peter Skoronski. That's an offensive line revamp in just a year. And we all know that Brian Callahan, the new head coach of this team, he's bringing over his dad, Bill Callahan, who is one of the best offensive line coaches the NFL has seen. So if they get right in the trenches and Will Levis can be that franchise quarterback and he can be more consistent with that accuracy, this could be a scary team. Another move that I love this team has made was getting Tony Pollard. Now, Tony Pollard is not your every down running back. He's not. He's a very good running back, had over 1,000 yards rushing. What do I mean that he's not an every down running back? In goal line situations, he's not the best running back to have. He's not a physical running back, but he's a guy that's going to go out there and be very explosive with this team. 1,005 rushing yards on the season, 6 rushing touchdowns, and he had the 7th most carries in the NFL. And he played behind a very good Dallas Cowboys offensive line. But he has that speed to catch the outside. What makes this fit so very interesting is that you have Tajay Spears as well. The reason why Derrick Henry did not have those beasts of a numbers early on this season, besides the offensive line being inconsistent and being terrible in run blocking, he's a sore running back. Derrick Henry has to get downhill and build up speed. You now have 2 very speed backs that can go back there, catch the edge, go upfield like it's no tomorrow, and they can catch the football out the backfield. You put more weapons around Will Levis, and it can create more chaos. They can do motion with both of the running backs in the backfield, and you have DeAndre Hopkins over top with Calvin Ridley inside or outside the slot. The possibilities are endless with this team. I love the move of getting Tony Pollard, and you still have Tajay Spears, this team. That's a major plus. The only thing that I will say, you do need that physical running back, but you have that in possibly Hassan Haskins or Julius Chestnut as well. It's going to be very interesting to see what they do with that running back room. And one thing about Brian Callahan, he likes to do weird things with his running backs. Look at what he did with the Cincinnati Bengals when he was giving play call suggestions to Zach Taylor with how to use those running backs and Chase Brown and Joe Mixon. So he's going to get those guys involved. So I'm not worried about the run game being a non-factor with this team, because it's going to be a major factor with this team. And we can look at it in Will Levis games. Half of the times when Derrick Henry's not getting the football enough and Tajay Spears not getting the football enough, Will Levis was carrying the offense on his back. And he looked very solid doing it. I'm not trying to make it seem like this guy's going to go out there and be a top 5 quarterback or top 10 quarterback, but with the potential that he has, it's crazy. He does need to clean up his footwork inside the pocket, but besides that, they got something right with this kid. And the only reason that the footwork was erratic this season is because of the pressure he had to deal with, which brings me back to the Lloyd Cushenberry signing. Another move is getting Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley, man, this is a very good move. The Tennessee Titans take him away from Jacksonville Jaguars. He wanted to stay with the Jaguars. The Jaguars not going to go out there and be able to pay him because they had to pay Trevor Lawrence sooner than later. But like I mentioned earlier in the video, you have a quarterback that's entering his 2nd year on a rookie contract, and he was a 2nd-round pick. You can go out there and you can pay Calvin Ridley. Now, Calvin Ridley is not your typical 30-year-old wide receiver. He's going to be 30 years old when the season starts, and a lot of people are making jokes about that. They could pay him. They could not pay A.J. Brown at the same time. Like I mentioned a couple weeks ago, different general manager, different way of thinking. I believe this general manager would have easily paid A.J. Brown a lot of money. But when A.J. Brown left, it left a major hole in that wide receiving room, no matter how you look at it. Treylon Burks has not been able to catch on just yet. They went out there and they got DeAndre Hopkins after the Arizona Cardinals let him go. And DeAndre Hopkins was very good with this team this season. We'll get to him in just a second. You look at Calvin Ridley, a guy that can go out there and be a very smooth route runner. Very reliable hands, can make some moves after the catch. Had his problems with the Atlanta Falcons, but he was the Atlanta Falcons' top wide receiving threat. He missed a year because of a gambling issue, and he came out of college late at 24 years old. So this is a guy that does not have that much mileage on his body in terms of NFL mileage. Has not dealt with major injuries in the past. So you're basically getting a guy that's still young into his career. I know that's crazy to think about, but he got drafted when he was 24 years old. He missed a year because of a gambling issue, and this is a guy that showed major potential with the Falcons, and the Falcons traded him to the Jacksonville Jaguars. And he gave the Tennessee Titans a lot of problems. The Titans saw that and they say, hey, let's bring this guy in. Let's take him away from our division rival and let's put him with our star quarterback in Will Levis. Great move. And I love the move as a whole. He's going to come in. He's going to easily be the number 1 or number 2 wide receiver with this team with DeAndre Hopkins. And now you can open up this offense because DeAndre Hopkins this season had 1,057 receiving yards and 7 receiving touchdowns and 75 catches. And he is still a very good wide receiver. He may not be that same DeAndre Hopkins from the Houston Texans, but guess what? He's still very valuable with this team. You can move him inside and outside the slot, and he's one of the best possession wide receivers in the NFL still. And you look at Calvin Ridley, 76 receptions, 1,016 receiving yards, 8 receiving touchdowns. Now you have to look at a guy like Treylon Burks. We're entering year 3. The rookie season, he showed some good moments here and there, but they brought this kid in to be the A.J. Brown replacement. He hasn't been that guy just yet. Some people will call him a bust. I believe that he hasn't been utilized in the best situation. At the same time, the injuries have hurt this kid. Dealt with a turf toe injury his rookie season. Then you look at it this season. He suffered that concussion like I mentioned a couple minutes ago against the Steelers. And he missed a good portion of the season because of that. He has to stay healthy. 16 receptions for 221 receiving yards and 0 receiving touchdowns in your second year. That's not good. But he can benefit a lot from being in single coverage because now you have Calvin Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins. If Treylon Burks cannot work with this, you can move off of him. You're going to have to. Because now you have 2 number 1 options. He's no longer the number 1 threat. His rookie season, you can say he was a number 1 wide receiver. It was a lot of pressure on him. That is true. He had a lot of pressure on him. But right now, you have a guy in Calvin Ridley that you can learn from. You have a guy in DeAndre Hopkins that played this entire season. You should have been learning from him. The thing is with Treylon Burks, stay healthy and get open on the field. He struggles against press at times and especially against zone coverage, which is very interesting because in Arkansas, this is a guy that showed good explosiveness. In the NFL so far, it's a different game. I fully understand that. He hasn't been there just yet. And I like Treylon Burks a lot. I really do. He was a top wide receiver for me when he came out in the NFL draft, but it hasn't worked out, and it seems like I've missed on that. Hopefully he can turn things around. I would give him 1 more year, and if he cannot turn things around after this upcoming season, you decline that 5th-year option, and you go into a brand new situation because that wide receiving core a couple years ago when they traded A.J. Brown, boy, it was tough because you had Treylon Burks basically as your number 1 wide receiver. Then you had Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. No disrespect to him. Nick Westbrook-Ikhine did his thing. He was trying to go out there and trying to be a star wide receiver. He's just not a true number 1 or even a true number 2 wide receiver at times. On the season, 28 receptions, 370 receiving yards, 3 receiving touchdowns. And yet he put up better numbers than Treylon Burks. And you also had Kyle Phillips as well. I think Kyle Phillips is just a very good special teamer. That's it. The receiving thing can still be there, but he's a better special teamer than he is a wide receiver. So bringing in Calvin Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins over the last couple of years is going to help this offense and elevate them to the next level. So the last notes on the offensive end before I go to the defense. Getting Tony Pollard, very explosive running back that matches very well with Tajay Spears. I love that. Lloyd Cushenberry is my favorite signing with this team, even when you add in the defensive signings as well because of how bad the offensive line was. It's about giving Will Levis a fighting chance. The same way that I said give Bryce Young a fighting chance, you give Will Levis a fighting chance. The only difference is that Will Levis is a beast of a man. He's a big quarterback and he can take those hits on the chin and he can get right back up. But you want to go out there and help this team out as much as possible. And shout out to the general manager, Rand, because he's doing his thing right now. Now, when you look at the defense, they lost to Nico Autry to the Texans. That stings. It really does. But going out there and trading for L'Jarius Sneed in a secondary that struggled this season, oh, I love it. L'Jarius Sneed was a top cornerback for the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, he was a number 2 cornerback playing alongside Trent McDuffie, but don't get it twisted. L'Jarius Sneed has been very consistent the last couple of years. On this season, 48 receptions allowed, 470 receiving yards, 4 pass breakups, 0 touchdowns allowed. That's the biggest one to 2 interceptions. And the thing is, when you look at his game, he's a press man corner and he's gotten better at zone as well. He can go out there and he can match up with some of the best wide receivers in the game. That's how physical he is at the line of scrimmage. It's going to be very interesting to see what they do with his secondary in general. But to get L'Jarius Sneed for a 3rd round pick, that is a steal. Because there is no player right now in the 3rd round that you could have gotten that's going to make a major impact with this team immediately like L'Jarius Sneed. He's a veteran. He's went to a Super Bowl. He's a Super Bowl champion multiple times. He's a beast. I love this game. And this is the secondary that needed help. Now, they traded Kevin Byard to the Philadelphia Eagles. Great trade because the Philadelphia Eagles just let him go. Now he's with the Chicago Bears. So you basically finessed the Philadelphia Eagles. But when you look at the secondary the last couple of years, Caleb Farley was not able to catch on as a top cornerback with this team. Christian Fulton was not able to catch on either. Because if both of those guys were, you would not have to go out there and make a trade to get L'Jarius Sneed. So the general manager is looking at this right now saying, hey, we missed out on 2 players when I was not drafting them at the time. It was a different general manager. Let's go out there and bring in some veterans. Let's go get Chidobe Awuzie. Let's go get L'Jarius Sneed, because the Tennessee Titans had one of the worst passing defenses in the NFL this previous season. And now you still have Roger McCreary, who was a very good cornerback with the team as well. You can make the case that he was the best cornerback with this team this season. When you look at Roger McCreary's numbers, he's a slept-on cornerback in the NFL. When you look at his numbers, they're very good. 59 receptions allowed for 512 receiving yards, 0 touchdowns allowed, and 1 interception. Once again, now you have 2 cornerbacks that did not give up a touchdown this season, and Roger McCreary and L'Jarius Sneed. And Chidobe Awuzie knows the system with the Cincinnati Bengals because he came up from the Bengals. And now your new head coach was the former offensive coordinator with the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, Chidobe Awuzie came from a bad Bengals defense, but it wasn't on him. He showed some good moments with the Dallas Cowboys early in his career, and he was a top cornerback with the Cincinnati Bengals coming off this season. But he can easily now be your number 2 to number 3 cornerback, because no matter how you look at it, L'Jarius Sneed's going to be the top dog, and Roger McCreary can lock things up in that slot. He can do some things as well, inside and outside the slot. So I love the moves that they're making. Now, you're still going to miss some safeties on this team. They miss Kevin Byard, but to be real with you guys, he wasn't the same Kevin Byard. And I'm not trying to get on him, but he was not the same guy. A money hooker, solid safety to have. He's not a top 5 safety, but he's a top safety to have. Like I mentioned before, they're going to miss Danico Autry a lot, but you have Jeffrey Simmons, who this season missed the back half of the season. 5.5 sacks on the season, 1 forced fumble. We all know when he's fully healthy, one of the best defensive linemen in the AFC. It's a reason why he's going to get paid when it's time for him to get another contract extension, because that's how good he is. Harold Landry missed all of the season the year before, dealing with a torn ACL, but just before that season, he had double-digit sacks. This season, guess what? He went right back to form. Harold Landry said the ACL is not going to hold me down. 10.5 sacks on the season, 0 forced fumbles, 0 interceptions, but was a huge playmaker. Can stop the run, put pressure on the quarterback. The way that the Cincinnati Bengals defense was shaped up was not the best. They generated a lot of pressure off the front 7. And why do I bring up the Cincinnati Bengals? Because Brian Callahan was a former offensive coordinator for the Bengals. So what is he going to want to do with this defense? Get a lot of pressure up front with those guys, those big bodies that can stop the run, that can go out there and do some nasty things. And their linebacking duo as a whole, and their front 7 as a whole, they can stop the run, or they can contain the run. It's the secondary that you worry about. So if they can get pressure with Jeffrey Simmons and Harold Landry, best situation possible with the Tennessee Titans is that you finish in the middle of this division. This could be one of those teams you look at that could be going from worst to first. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I would not be surprised, because this is a very unpredictable division. You look at the Jacksonville Jaguars, they started the season off 8-3. And next thing you know, the Houston Texans are winning the division. The Indianapolis Colts are in this division as well, and it's going to be tough. But the Tennessee Titans right now, you get a true evaluation of Will Levis. If you're number 2 and he looks very good, you know you have your franchise guy. And you don't have to pay him anytime soon. 2nd round pick, young deal. That's a great move with the Titans. And if he is not your guy, if you end up with a top 3 to top 5 pick, you double dip next season, you draft another quarterback. But I don't think that's going to be the case. I think Will Levis is the guy. Because a lot of people could come on here and say, well, they didn't have that much film. They had film on him. They were trying to slow him down. Look what the Miami Dolphins did. Vic Fangio, one of the best defensive minds in the NFL, he shredded that defense on their home field. And he's intense. The thing is with Will Levis, the kid is so intense at times, you can see him almost pop a blood vessel in his head. He was upset that he was not a 1st round pick. So he's going to always have that chip on his shoulder, no matter what. Even when it's time for you to pay him, if he is that great of a quarterback, he's going to have the chip on his shoulder. He will never forget that. Look at Geno Smith with the Seattle Seahawks. This man cannot get over the fact that he was not a 1st round pick many years ago. A lot of quarterbacks that go in the 2nd, 3rd round, they're pissed off about that. So Will Levis has worked even harder because he wasn't a 1st round pick, and is pushing off these other guys on this team. He meshed very well with DeAndre Hopkins, and he had some great moments this season. Like I said before, I'm not saying that he's going to be in the same category with guys like Josh Allen, Joe Burrow. I'm not saying that. But the thing is with the Tennessee Titans, you have a brand new coaching staff. I am kind of worried about that because it's a 1st-year head coach. Be very interested to see what they do. But the same questions I have about this team, I had about DeMeco Ryans as well. Look how they turned out. They're pretty good. So sometimes you can have these questions. It's up to the coach to go out there and answer those questions and prove you wrong. And I do think that Brian Callahan would be a good head coach because this is a guy that was in the family. He's the son of Bill Callahan. So he knows how to get the best out of guys. And he had exclusive work with Jake Browning and Joe Burrow. He worked exclusively with those guys. That's part of the reason why he got this job, because of the great job that he did with Jake Browning. Granted, they have T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd, all those weapons, but you look at the weapons that the Titans have now. I think they'll be okay. And I think that Will Levis would be a very good quarterback with this team. One thing I do know for sure, their secondary will be better for this upcoming season than it was for this season that just passed. But let me know in the comment section below, how do you guys feel about the Tennessee Titans, and are they headed in a truly great direction? If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. If you like the video, hit the like button. Most importantly, want each and every last one, guys, stay safe, stay positive. Thanks for watching the video, guys. God bless.